Okay. Hello, Lisa Star. So great to see you again. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm excited about the Overtone Moon.
Yes, me and you together being overtones. We love this is our home territory. So for our new listeners, or for our old listeners, reminding us that we're meeting today to speak about the Overtone Moon, the fifth moon calendar, the fifth month. And I'm very blessed to meet you, Lisa Starr, 25, nearly 26 now years, explorer and teacher of natural time, the dream spell calendar, the 13 moon calendar, made by Jose Archimedes, based on the ancient Mayan calendar, the Tzolkin, and the ancient Mayan wisdom. And we've been keeping it up now. It's our fifth meeting to speak about the moon. We meet up every moon to speak about the upcoming moon and its qualities, and we speak about the challenges that might show up and also give some practical tips for you listeners on how you can break through the challenges and use the energy or ride the energy to evolve in a healthy and natural way during this time of the year. And since both of us are overtones, you're a blue overtone storm. I'm a white overtone mirror. We're very happy to talk about what we know very closely. And I'm actually really curious because we never really, you and I, gone in depth into speaking of how we experience being overtone and how we experience overtone people as overtones. And so I'm really curious to hear about how you perceive this time of the year and how you work with the energy of this tone. Um, so maybe my first question to you is, which I'm curious about, is how is it for you when you realized your kin and you realized that you're overtoned and you understood the meaning of being overtoned? How is it for you realizing the how it was growing up and evolving as an overtone person before you had this distinction?
Well, I hope people listening know a lot about the tribes so that while we're spending all this time discussing the tones and the moons, you are conversant in the tribes because then what I'll say makes more sense. I'm a blue overtone storm and I was born on a portal day. And so it's really hard for me to distinguish what about my life is blue storm and what is overtone because they're both really over the top social behaviors and they're both really strong um, indicators of resilience and power in a way. So I don't know. I wish I've known other blue storms and I can compare notes. They seem more in their head in a way or more nuanced. And I'm just sort of a double whammy of the intensity of empowerment. And empowerment means like I think that I just had a lot of clear directives when I was young, like I know what I'm doing today. I know what I want to spend my time doing. I was very, very active. I'm still that way, meaning like there's not a lot of like lying about in my life. Um, and then social maladept behaviors like not listening to others as a child or being really intolerant of slow-paced learners in school. I don't mean people that didn't have learn like who would have disabilities, but people who didn't care about learning, just like, oh, you're just dragging me down. I just want more information. I want more expansive awareness of how this world works. I want to dream bigger, and you're just being such Luddites because you don't care. And that seems to represent a little bit of how I am even as an adult. Just like
Hmm.
there's so much to behold, and overtone to me feels like just getting into things, not being surface.
Hmm. I can definitely identify with that. So I heard from between your words, so you're talking about the place that's always looking to kind of expand and broaden the understanding, the experience, which is definitely very overtone, very empowerment, very much about empowering what is in this moment and in the different layers of reality that we're experiencing in the same moment, empowering whatever is existing right now in the moment, and also about breaking out of the structure, the frame that we
Yeah.
go through on the way to the overtone and the self-existing. So really about expanding the horizon and expanding the existing definition and barrier that people might carry as what they're experiencing or what they're thinking or how they're approaching what they're meeting in their life in their reality. And for our listeners, just to kind of put it in simple words, so the overtone tone, the three keywords that come with it are command, empower, and radiance. So empowerment is, from my experience and perspective, it's really about seeing what is and kind of pushing it towards its next destination or its next level of possibility. And it's a kind of a way of looking at things that we always see the higher potential of what's existing in this moment, where it wants to go to in the next step, in the next level. Um, so I wonder how you've experienced it. In my experience, it always felt like I'm arriving in places or seeing, like even in school or places that were kind of structured, or a certain job, and I arrive in some kind of a business that someone built, and then I look around, and at first I'm very naturally kind of finding myself in the existing form. So I'm learning the rules, I'm learning how things work, I'm learning the dynamics. That's kind of like the entrance point. But quite early on, I would start to realize what could be done better, or what wants to improve, or what could be where people are saying that things could be, better and easier and more comfortable and more efficient for them. And then I noticed that once I see that, my energy starts being directed into creating that. And usually it would like threaten the people that I'd be working for, because they'd feel like someone is trying to push their boundaries. And it always was very like, when I realized that this is who I am from a young age, like from a very, very young age, as early as I can remember, already in kindergarten, I was fully like pushing the kindergarten teachers, not physically, but like testing them all the time on their belief systems
Mm.
and the way they're trying to educate us. And every day, I don't know how it is where you grew up or where I grew up, there was this thing of like, if you're doing something naughty, then you're put in the corner of the room.
Mm.
It was like this way of educating in the past. And every day I would be put in the corner in kindergarten, in pre-kindergarten, like preschool, like before kindergarten, I'd be put in the corner every single day. I could not accept the way things were being done. And I remember myself at that age already like thinking like, this makes no sense. Like, I don't believe them. They don't mean what they say. It could be so much better. Why are they doing it like this? From like when I was 3 or 4 years old. So I wonder how you experienced this empowerment kind of energy in your life, in your childhood.
It's funny, like, and especially for people listening, trying to just connect this to the time we're in. I mean, I'll speak about it, but I want anyone who isn't overtone listening. If you are overtone, it'd be great if people found the moons to also learn about their own tone. So if you're overtone, then yeah,
Definitely.
we're in your groove. You found your teachers. Um, but I would just say that it could be difference between being female and male in a way, but just feeling outsized. Like the hard part of being overtone is that you're kind of over the top. Your impetus is to break free of form and have your, let's just, I'll think of it just for myself, not moving through society changing something, but like I can't be boxed in, just as you said. I need to feel myself have freedom in all directions. I mean, that's how I describe the sacred geometry of the overtone tone or the overtone moon, is just you break from that square or rectangle or shape at the base of the pyramid and self-existing that I spoke of, and you're turning life into a circle, that doesn't really have one point, or it's a five-pointed star streaming in one more direction that we can't really name, either going upward or rooted in the earth, but it's different than like this just societal experience. And so that's how I feel myself to be, is just like, I'm very uncomfortable if you try to limit me with thoughts and ideas and concepts that are constructed by human beings. And I just want to make sure I can move wherever I need to go in the world, whether I'm sort of with the minerals or the animals or the humans or the ethers, and just have personal freedom. And I think we are activators, and this is the time of activation, in the sense that it's very wonderful to follow this path and feel the correct, to me, the spiritually correct nature of having a lot of preparation and awakening before you act. So we have 4 moons, 4 28-day moons of sort of grappling with our karma and seeing the challenges, paying attention to challenge, not denying challenge, like denying problems. No, facing problems for the lunar moon and reckoning with what they may be for us to navigate the whole year or wave spell. And then introducing that we're going to be of service and also connected to divinity in that way, and then being specific about a form of service, which is also a way to, I think, as we say, ground things, map things out, which is to not be like in your head and dreamy and out of control with like, I can do anything. Like, no, you're going to do this thing set out for you, like you're shown throughout the moon. And then overtone is kind of where the human ego lives, in a way. Like, I'm going to do this now. I want to do it now. I have the energy and drive, and I'm on. Switch is on. And so I think it can be comfortable for how we are raised personality wise in our species, to finally be like, okay, I don't really have to think about things. I can just do.
Mm.
Um, and I suppose I feel like that person, but I feel like overtone is purer than the human ego in a way, because it's just, it's more in alignment with what is. Like, I think it's hard to maybe articulate, but just like to really move in all directions, like a radiant sun, meaning like the sun itself has radiance, one of the words for overtone, and it streams in all directions as a fiery orb, not just one direction or changing directions and focus. And, that's pure and more free and liberated than the human personality. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I like that description. So I'll connect our listeners to how all we're speaking about is connected with the moon. So the fifth 28-day month of the 13 moon year. So we've finished the self-existing moon, the fourth moon, which was about kind of labeling and recognizing the structures that we are currently living in and we've been maintaining in our lives till this point, towards a point of breakthrough, a point of development, a point in which we take that and empower it so we can connect with our higher potential, we could say, and where our natural direction of development is going, and connect to that and act upon it so we can actually really experience an experience of things getting wider, more empowered, more precise, more energetic for us in our process. And the movement between the self-existing moon and the overtone moon is pretty much like we acknowledge that there is a certain structure that cannot hold the energetic force that wants to go through it, and this structure needs to expand.
Mhm.
And the overtone moon, like the overtone tone, is a time of expansion. And it's a time of expansion in which we are kind of commanded in a way to do certain things because it's time to do them, and it we're pushed to do it regardless if we think that we're ready to do it.
Mhm.
And so in this month, we can have experiences like we feel like the reality is kind of forcing us into doing processes that are confronting for us or challenging for us, because it's kind of like a parent telling us, it's time to grow. It's time to grow up. And so this moon could really be experienced as a time of things kind of gearing up, speeding up, starting to go to the next level. We can recognize it in different aspects of our collective reality at the moment. And for us personally, it's kind of like a time that we can be expecting to have experiences that are pushing us beyond our limits or what we thought were our limits. And I assume for someone that's not familiar with this kind of notion of development, that things can actually work in this flow, like we've been practicing by living with the dream spell and the 13 moon calendar for some time in our lives. So it could be quite overwhelming. Like, whoa, why is this happening to me right now? Like, why am I being pushed to my limit? Have I done something wrong? Is it because of something that I'm missing, or questioning myself? Am I really able to go to this next step? And really, when we look at our lives in reflection, we see that we've been in this kind of situation many, many times over again, that we've been demanded or commanded to move in a certain direction that we wouldn't necessarily choose out of complete free will, but it's like we were kind of forced to do it. And then we look back and we say, yeah, it was hard, but I'm actually happy this happened because it actually gave me the possibility to go in that direction I was wishing for a long time, but I couldn't manage, or I didn't understand how to drive myself there. So I'll pass the ball to you. I wonder how you see this movement between the self-existing moon and the overtone moon. How do you experience it?
Well, you're bringing me so much joy because you're teaching me how to tell people about it who aren't overtone. So whenever I do my work, I just have this disclaimer, like, I don't know how to tell you about blue storm times or overtone times because I'm so saturated myself with these qualities that it's very hard for me to know what it's like if you're not that.
Hmm.
It's like the benefit is you can learn about overtone from the inside, but the other thing is that I'm not quite sure how I would approach it from the outside. And I think you just did a wonderful job. Like all of the tones and the moons, stepping into them is such a gift. You can learn so much about the 13-day wave spells when you spend conscious 28-day moons learning about the tones, which is why we do this, and also why I always teach both systems, never just tilted to the Zolkin. I would say that that was just really beautiful to imagine that there are people that find this overtone moment like suddenly, the gas pedal is stuck, on the car. Like, what? I can't slow down. Whereas I find it very comforting to be at that pace. I describe it a lot like, well, two different metaphors I'd like to offer about the overtone shift from self-existing. One is thinking about waves in the ocean, which is how I teach wave spells because I live by an ocean and I always have. And that is like the first four moons or tones are how the wave is forming beneath the surface where we can't really see it at all. There's some kind of current or seismic event that happens underwater, and slowly the displacement is pushing water upward. And we, as humans in our quest through the wave spell experience, are in our own dark material, our unconscious material. Things are surfacing, something is shaking something toward the surface, but we ourselves aren't clear what it is yet. We're just feeling it and swimming with it in more darkness. And the overtone moment is when the wave turns from something sub-oceanic to like a water mountain that you can notice. And any of us who spent time in the ocean, I think you know that moment. It's a quickening, a quickening. And once we're not dealing with water navigating water, but water navigating air, it moves faster. And so we also move faster from overtone on. And we did this, like I said, deep work where it's harder to move and see and understand until this point. And so getting clarity is one of the great rewards of the overtone experience. But I agree that if you don't like fast movement or that's not your nature, then it can be really intense to suddenly be like, we're going. And the other thing, which is the opposite of the ocean, and it's human technology, is when you are in an airplane taxiing on the runway, and then you start moving down the runway and you feel all the gears shift and the sounds of the motor intensifying. But there's that moment when you're no longer on the runway, when you're in the air. And that is, to me, also very overtone. Just like,
That's a
oh,
beautiful analogy.
we're we're sort of free of that friction.
Yeah,
We're flying.
yeah. That's a beautiful analogy. I like that very much. I often, when I teach about the overtone tone, so I give this example like when reality forces us to do something, even like that we would think might be a bit premature or against our will, but very quickly it demands us to step into our power to deal with it.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like you said, like when we're riding with the plane on the ground. So it's like, yeah, I'm on the ground. I'm on this land, we call it this name, and I know where my home is. I came from there, and everything is very structured and ordinary. And then there's this moment we're suddenly taking off into the air, and suddenly we're in the air, and we just know where we're heading. We don't know what will happen on the way. We assume we do when we're on a plane, but if we look at it from a personal development perspective, so it's this moment we take a step in the direction that empowers us, but we don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And this radiance feeling, it's kind of for me, it's a combination of feeling very alive and very energetic and very present, and also it's a bit like a force, like a fire that's going through me, and it could
Yeah.
go on for a long period. I can feel this feeling until it settles down. But it's really this feeling like, yes, I'm in my power. I'm meeting my limits and I'm going beyond them in a healthy way, in a way that I mean healthy, like it's within my abilities what I'm doing. It's not taking me somewhere that I have not the ability to go there. But it's still very unknown because it's still quite the beginning of the wave spell. It's the first turning point, but it's still the beginning. So we don't know where this is going to lead us yet. But we know that we've been zapped into ourselves and kind of pushed into development, whether we like it or not. And I love this essence, this flavor of life. And when I just started learning about the overtone tone and my kin, I when I understood what the overtone tone means, I remember I was really satisfied. I was like, yes, this is really, really reflecting me. I'm really like this. And also commanding. I've always been a person that it comes very naturally for me to command when I'm sure about things, which is something I love about overtone people. I love this. I love meeting this quality in the world. I love it. I feel so like it makes me feel joy when I meet overtone people. It really does. Like I see how they're all of us are people that kind of we don't take shit. We don't just stay somewhere because it's convenient for us. We
Yeah.
cannot. If it gets too convenient, we must break out. Like we cannot stay somewhere because it's convenient. And I see this over and over again with all the overtone people I meet. It's like once it gets too steady, too formulated,
Mhm.
it starts to like, no, no, this can't be it. Like there must be a better version of this that we can make. We can develop this somewhere new. And if there's resistance to that, then it's like, I'm out of here. I'm not gonna sit around and play with you guys just wanting things to be comfortable and not aspiring to develop. Like I'm going to my development.
Well, I can imagine how that would be, that then that this moon would be kind of shocking to some people. I'm thinking about it from the outside eyes again, and just, I mean, I'm never judgmental of people's tones mostly, but I guess I have sympathy for how, if you're a more static person by your birth astrology, not like a personality defect, but you're just a more stable person, stable meaning, like an example would be a planetary person, um, who I think of as most aligned with what our planet's substance is, which is again like the mineral element, which moves very slowly compared to water and air. That, yeah, the overtone experience challenges because it's sort of oppositional. And for anyone who then just in their personality, if we take astrology out of it, has had trauma, or their physical being is like more sedentary, then I can feel how it would be nerve-wracking, like, meaning it's disturbing to your equilibrium to step into a time that is very much about quickening and freedom of movement, which means that streaming quality of the sun, just things that move by their own force or intuition rather than in response to anything around them. I think overtone is a time when you don't have to feel as inhibited by culture and buildings, just all the things that we do to organize. It's just sort of beyond that. And that's an important part of this. This is a spiritual path to me. It's a path for living, but a path for living spiritually, meaning in consciousness and care for all the dimensions that you can feel in your body and being awake to them. And I think the overtone experience is just a reminder of that, that we get to feel a little of the infusion of the elemental part of a spiritual existence that isn't planetary, for example. It's just like, again, it's very sun-like, star-like. The number 5 can translate from Mayan spirituality to sacred geometry as having, like I said, that difference between something that is 4-pointed to 5 adds another experience that makes things circular and therefore in all directions. And the other thing is about the actual Mayan numerology, because we have this dot and bar way of counting through Mayan teaching, where the first 4 tones are all dots. One dot, then a dot next to it, then a third dot in a line, and then self-existing is 4. And then the overtone is a bar, where in a sense, to me, we move from like pinpointing and not boxing things in, but organizing things in a certain way to just like it's all turned into a stream. And it's been really fun. I've followed the calendar way longer than we use this verb in English, streaming, which reflects the internet's way of offering us information. But this is kind of like that, when everything is just available and a rushing river, and we jump in, or we are that through our own navigating our own problems. Suddenly we feel a path or an avenue that is in motion. I don't think you can be stuck in the overtone moon. And then I can understand from listening to you how some people's nature is to be more stuck than the overtone moon allows.
Yeah.
Or your defense structure is that, which is why we do the wave spells, because each of us will hit parts of wave spells. It could be the same every wave spell, or could change for us, where we're like, this is so uncomfortable to who I am, either in my astrology or just in my moment, in my life, in my year right now. It's hard to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in the previous wave spell, I actually had a very powerful kind of experience on the Overtone day that I was really pushed out of my. I had this very stable structure in my mind of how my life is gonna work in the next period. And then one little message I received completely in one moment just shattered my whole idea of how things are gonna be in the upcoming time. Just like one tiny moment. And it really stirred me up at the moment I got it. It was late night, and I was like, no, I can't deal with this right now. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll start dealing with it. But before I went to sleep, I told myself, okay, let's give it just one moment. Let's give it a bit of space. This feeling I'm experiencing right now. And I started to feel how uncomfortable I was feeling and how insecure it made me feel. And then I said, okay, so I just want to put the intention before I go to sleep that soon enough, even very soon, I will find myself in this situation, in this moment, that I will look back at this thing that happened and I will say, I'm so happy this happened. This was definitely for my better, my higher good that that thing happened to me. And that kind of put things in order for me of to remember, it usually feels like this when we're being pushed out of our comfort zone by life, that it feels like very unfair at the moment, maybe unjust, disappointing, infuriating, destabilizing, like these kind of feelings. And I'm sharing this because I want us to start speaking of how we can offer people perspectives to deal with what the overtone moon might be bringing into their lives.
Mm.
So, like I said about myself, because I'm familiar with this notion of reality of how things work, because I've recognized it and realized it so many times over again that really around certain times of the wave spell, certain things happen, and it's so repetitive and so orderly that it's become something that I know. I know that this can happen on a day like this or on a
Mhm.
moon like this. But still, it doesn't mean that on the human level, I'm not dealing with the challenges that it's making me go through. So this challenge has pretty much pushed me to grow into an area with, for example, with my business, which I've been thinking of and speaking of for quite a long time, maybe a few years, and saying, yeah, when comes the time, one day I'll take this step. And this thing that happened, it just pushed me directly, like from behind, like left me no choice but to take that step. And on the higher perspective, I'm in great joy. I'm like very happy. Finally, this is happening. I'm gonna deal with these fears, these challenges, and grow. And I know it's because I'm used to this overtone way of life. Like I'm used to this kind of finding joy and presence and vitality in these kind of experiences. But for someone that's not used to it or not expecting it or not hasn't doesn't have this kind of way of seeing life like we do through the natural movement of evolution and the waves. So like you said, it could be quite shaking, quite stirring. So I wonder from your wisdom, um, how would you offer someone to approach this kind of realm of experience like I described that could show up in the overtone moon?
Well, what occurs to me to remind people is just that overtone is kind of a strange word, like self-existing. It's not a word we use all the time, like electric, lunar, magnetic, rhythmic, etc. Like those are words that we kind of have in our vernacular. They connect to thoughts and ideas we use. But I overtone was like one to learn. Self-existing was similar. But you can just kind of like it's too much, right? When things are overtone, it's a time when it's too much. Like I could definitely surrender that to people. Like this is just too much. This is getting crazy. I don't think I can take more. This I can't deal with this much right now. Like that could be a really
Yeah,
normal way
definitely.
of stepping in. the moons themselves intensify, I believe, strongly in their third week, like day 15 to 21, that's when it might really just feel like, okay, come on. This is how can I take on all this too muchness? And so the answer to that is just one day at a time or one moment at a time, because this is the moment in the wave spell of our year to learn how to best empower ourselves. It is not about empowering someone else. It is a really huge gift that we are learning how to be empowered. And again, empowered like the sun, not like I have power over others, but just like so full of force. How to be the brightest light. How do we stream in all directions with like unending fever? That is really intense to live through, because we are shattering limitations, as we said, in ourselves. We're shattering limitations set up by the wave spell and the teaching of the Maya, actually, that we pace ourselves. And then this is the moment. It's not like Overtone exists for the rest of the year or the 13 moons either. It's this moment. This is the moment we need to ignite our power. And then we spend almost the rest of the time modulating it, you know? So all of that could be really a lot. It works really well in a lot of parts of the world because it is the time of turning into darkness in the northern hemisphere and entering the part of fall that suddenly feels pretty wintry, honestly, right? Very quickly. And so it is such a gift to ignite our internal combustion and warmth, fire, power, the light we offer others, going into kind of the diminishment of that support in nature. And I just think people go inward. So we need to, when we can't be feeding off like the natural setting and the vastness of like open skies for hours and hours and hours of the day, when we're limited by the time changes that bring darkness, we need this boost to counterbalance that and still have this vitality. So that would happen for us every year. And we can notice this time is the overtone time. It's kind of when people start talking about the beauty of light because there's such an absence of it.
Mm, I like that.
Um,
I like that. And also it connects to me to the place that I often remind people that I guide and coach that it's often when we are afraid of something that will happen or a certain step we or change we want to make in our lives that we are fearing that we won't be capable of doing it, that we don't have the ability, we don't have the energy, we don't have the courage. And the overtone moon is a time, and the overtone tone is a time that I feel it's kind of like we're being pushed into our power, and it's this familiar experience of like being pushed to deal with something, not knowing how we're going to deal with it, but then one step at a time we go through it, and then we realize that we actually did it.
yeah.
And it's a very important, it's kind of like how are we going to survive the winter? And then we go by day and face what the winter demands us to face, and then we at some point it moves, we pass it, and then we look back like, wow, I did that. And one thing I find very practical when it comes to stabilizing change in our life and stabilizing a life in which change is natural and not something to resist is by re-ensuring ourselves and remembering every time again and again through the practice of going through overtone experiences that when comes the moment of truth, we're only put in situations with which we have the ability to deal with. It's kind of law of nature. And it's something that I noticed from working over years with people, that most people don't live with this kind of consciousness that I am powerful enough to deal with the challenges that life is dealing me with. And it's a very profound lesson that I enjoy very much teaching and learning it over again, because I really feel vitality in this mode, in this part of life. It's really empowering to feel capable to deal with challenges and growth, not just because it's hard and wow, I'm happy I dealt with it, because I actually feel my full capability awaken, and then I can really break through life into new possibilities. And I mean, I wish this kind of experience for every human being to feel in the world, in their lives, that they could feel, even for a moment, every while, like, yeah, I can do it. I can go beyond my limitations. I can break through the constructs in which I'm used to existing within or living within. I can change. I can make change. I can make change, positive change, to feel better in life, to do things I enjoy, to be with people that make me feel better. I can improve, and maybe I'll kind of frame this into something practical. So for people listening to us that are going right now through this phase of either breakdown because our world is changing so fast, and the constructs are changing, and we see it on the personal level and on the collective level, um, to remember that whenever comes this point of self-doubt and self-questioning, the moment after we self-question ourselves, there is a part of ourselves that says, you know, of course I'm going to have to deal with this, even if it's unconscious. The part of us that's that bit of light in the dark that remembers that every time we've been in absolute darkness, we've always gone through it, because that's just the natural flow of life. Life is the most powerful force in this existence. It's what keeps going no matter what. And from my empowering mirror perspective, I would say that to our listeners, that if you experience during these days, during this moon, this feeling of absolute self-doubt, to remember that shortly after this will show up the energy that you need in order to expand into this new experience and break through. And it could be very enjoyable if enabled to, if we enable ourselves to go through it. It can be also very enjoyable.
I'm so out of touch. I don't even know that people have this experience of the overtone tone. I apologize for my insensitivity, my self-centeredness. I'm like, what? Overtone is so great to be free, to feel free, and also on an upward trajectory, because there are other stops in the 13 tone experience in the 13 moons that are about liberation as well. But again, see it within the whole frame of a wave spell. The wave spell of the year is that we are building to a peak experience. To me, it is just like a wave. The ocean wave will only go so high before the force it carries meets gravitational force that limits it. And also, I use the metaphor of the Greek mythology of Icarus, the boy who made wings out of wax and flew toward the sky. And when he got too close to the sun, the wax melted and he fell to earth. Like, to me, that is the wave spell. You know, we are climbing into a relationship with divinity, and we're getting as close as we can. We leave both the societal expectations and tedium, and we get as close as we can to however we perceive God, the universe. I mean, the sun is a great stand-in for any denomination of faith. And so the overtone moment is like a realization of oh, I'm a sun and I'm attracted. I'm going home. And that force that we are that's summoned in us, it's like a fever, it's like heat, it's again, it's freedom, but it's and also like a rocket ship. If you want to go past airplanes, there's so much turbulence and excitement and explosiveness in order to blast a rocket out of our atmosphere. And overtone is all that turbulence, but we need it to get where we belong on this journey. We don't all belong close to the sun. Like we're supposed to keep undulating close and back to earth, close and back to earth. That's the wave spell path. But overtone is when it gets way easier. And it's almost like all the power we need to make that journey, the one that will fade away when gravity reminds us we belong on Earth. As long as we're incarnated, we're not going to be in the heavens. But this overtone is our jet fuel to get us as far as we're meant to go in this wave spell. So I totally understand how that can be too much, overdoing it. It exhausts our body sometimes to be in the overtone moon. Just like, ugh, I can't get a break. But I find that very attractive. Like this is vitality for each of us. I want to just insert because I sometimes know the animals right off the top of my head that for the Maya, they didn't use the word overtone. It's not a translation of anything except the peacock, not the peahen, the peacock that has all of this incredible feathers, so that's the animal for the overtone moon.
Yeah, it's about showing off our vastest, I don't know if potential is the word, but like really our
Yeah.
whole fan of colors
Mhm.
to show up with it, to bring a moment that's more, the definition of the overtone is the highest point of the octave.
Mhm.
So it's like reaching that highest point of the potential and holding it for just a few moments, so it elevates our whole kind of
Mhm.
experience to a new level. And then in a very beautiful and harmonic way comes the rhythmic tone,
Right.
which is saying, okay, we push through, and
Mhm.
now we need to balance ourselves back together after we've gone through all of this kind of empowerment and prevailing through what we were used to having. And so let's speak for a few moments before we'll wrap up about the movement from the overtone to the rhythmic. So at some point during this moon, we can expect things to start calming down, to start going a
Maybe.
bit more towards a place that's looking to balance itself, as it's like when the rocket goes into the air. So the highest, the most powerful turbulent fire, it pushes up to a certain point, and then it goes to something that can be more maintained for a longer period. So it
Yeah.
finds a kind of a place that's not pushing the strongest it can. So I think one of the understandings that gave me a lot of peace when I started living my life with this wisdom is that understanding that every time we go through a breakthrough, naturally afterwards we'll have a time of rebalancing. And it's kind of like, don't worry, it will be calm again after the storm, like it always is. And it's just the nature of things because it's not meant to be in the highest part of the octave all the time. Even if we're living in a time that everything is kind of elevating to a new way and maybe a more enlightened or a more dynamic. There's different ways we can try to define it, but there will be a point during this moon that we will start to feel things are shifting into a more of a, okay, so how do I manage this newness into my existing life? How do I balance myself out with all this new that's just come in?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, uh, it's really quite calm after Overtone for a while. The rhythmic moon, the resonant moon, the galactic moon, it's the solar moon will all meet back. It'll be on fire,
Yeah,
like the sun. So it's similar. It can be overwhelming, but it's true that this is just kind of the time for things to really push hard. And I sort of disagree with you in the extent that I always feel like the first day of the moon is when you know you're in the moon, and I don't find a nuance like a winding down into one, and then you can almost feel it already starting. I really have this funny thing of waking up on the first day of a moon, just like, oh, that's different. And maybe that's
mm,
just how my monkey mind needs things to be articulated. That's my magic. But I do know that the final week of every moon is easier than, like I said, the third week, you know, that there is
yeah,
a really strong rhythm within the moons that's taking us purposely in four directions of the medicine wheel. The red, white, blue, yellow that we see throughout the Zolkin exists within the moons because the first week is in the east and it can be a little fiery. That's the element of the east, the red rising dawn. The second week is in the north. That's white, the place of kind of a purification and blessing, and that can feel a little calming. And then the third week is in the west, the blue falling night sky and the dream time, which is also the element water, and it's very fast moving in a certain way. And then we land in the final week in the south, in the yellow south, with the element earth. And I could talk about that in more detail another time, but just to quickly point out that there's this incredible alchemy that happens in the west, the place of water, because the north, the second week, is in the air, and the final week is earth. And so changing life from air to earth is a big alchemical shift.
yeah,
And water is connected to emotions, and emotions can be really intense in the third week in the West. I call it like it's Jose Arguelles called it the week of transformation. I can say acceleration.
mm,
So the way to pace oneself within any moon is to just understand that it comes out fiery in the beginning, fire like illumination. The mind is awake to a new idea. Then there's a little pause where we give it over to divinity, the purification, and then back at it in that alchemical change. And then the final week is sort of like, okay, I did it. And things are calming down in my body. Um, so if that helps. And in terms of the rhythmic moon, I don't know. I I think the rhythmic moon can feel really mundane after overtone, and I think we all earn it. You know, like rhythmic is, we'll talk much more about it, but it's about, to me, noticing our whole body is full of rhythm, the heartbeat, the lungs that breathe, like that we're unconscious of. And we are just spending 28 days aligning with that rhythm in our own bodies and in nature. And we all need to regulate after the overtone explosion of discovering how powerful we are. You know, if things are difficult in this moon for people socially or relationally, I think you have to train your mind to be like, it's because this is not empowering me.
mm,
And we're not going to walk through all year. I am empowering myself now. That's egotism, me. I'm empowered, powerful me. But we get a moment within the 13 where it is structured to check in and see where we are empowering ourselves, meaning becoming stronger and more vital, or where we've diminished our power and we need to be set free from that. And so that examination is happening right now. And if
mm,
things are falling away, it's because they need to be set aside when it comes to the examination of what makes you feel empowered, meaning you are full of life force.
mm. Beautiful. That's beautiful. I think with these very wise words, we'll complete for this time. So firstly, I want to thank you again for going on this journey with me and meeting up every moon to share our wisdoms and to broadcast them to the world for people to enjoy and learn through us and through our experience. And I want to remind our listeners that Lisa has an awesome podcast, which you've been going for some years now, broadcasting on Spotify about the daily signs and the wave spells and the moons. And this is how I got to know you, and I've been listening to you for some years. And also, people that want to know more about what you do can find all the information about all your different creations and teachings on your website, resonanttruth.com.
Yeah.
And is there anything else you'd like to say, kind of for to
Well,
conclude
I would
this
like to say that
session for
if
this
you
time?
are tuning into this when it is the overtone time, both Alon and I are, I mean, we do readings. And so if I always say to people, and I feel very embarrassed, like it's a sales pitch or a manipulation, but like tap into people when it's their time. If you want their best, not just wisdom, but their, yeah, it's aligned to us right now. If it's the overtone moment when you're listening, and we both know how to show you your astrology and where you are in your life path through the teachings of this, which I call natural time, as a way to bridge the Mayan, initiation through ancient Mayan wisdom that we now have translated to our modern society. So we both do that as well. And yeah, I want to say that it's really obvious to me that I could never facilitate these conversations. As a blue overtone storm, I'm extremely self-oriented, which has its ills and its joys. But you are so good at drawing out questions, and you're so generous to be the one asking them. So thank you.
It's my true pleasure. So we will meet again on the rhythmic moon. Until then, I wish you empowering times and to enjoy this time of the year. And we speak again soon.